Pledge, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a motion to approve the agenda for the April 22nd, 2025 Board of Education meeting as presented.
So moved.
So moved by Cam.
Second.
Second by Laura. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Moving on to our presentation, which is our budget presentation for the evening.
Do you want to say anything?
Great.
All right, so as you probably are aware, there is no state budget yet. I'm hearing that the budget negotiations will take about another week. But we do have to adopt the budget tonight. So both the expense and the revenue numbers have not changed since the March Board of Education meeting, and the financial slides are exactly the same. Okay, so our total revenues for 25-26 are $88,949,955, compared to this current year's adopted budget, $83,911,292, an increase of $5,038,663. The expenses, same thing, $88,949,955, compared to the adopted budget of last year, an increase of $5,038,663.
And why don't do you want me to jump in on that for a little bit in terms of transportation?
If you
Just
want to.
things, yeah, why don't we can talk about that for a little bit. It's something that I shared with board members recently and with new information from Fisher Bus. We've got, there's two ways that it can go. It can be like as we're presented with transportation costs. One is that we can budget increase that's relative to CPI. That can be accepted or rejected by the bus lines, and it was rejected by Fisher Bus. And they're experiencing cost increases which go above what the inflation rate, which is what, 2.9 is the number that we use for that, based on the most recent reporting. So that means that we need to put out a request for proposals. So that puts us in a position of we need to get ourselves understanding the fact that the transportation line is going to increase more than what you see here. This was based on the idea that they would renew at CPI. They are not. It's their right to do that. That means that automatically there's no other negotiation that goes on with it. It goes directly to the RFP, which means that Fisher Bus and other bus companies could be will be bidding for our services. And Christine's working in her office on creating that proposal. That's very recent information for us. At the same time, it might cross the mind of folks at this table and folks in the audience and all the voting public, what does this do to our budget? Because you're telling me that this is going to be an increase. It is going to be an increase, but we're not going to change the budget that we're putting forth for adoption tonight. We're at the tax cap already. Don't think it's prudent to make changes along those lines with it, but it is an acknowledgement of the fact that as we go into next year, there's going to be that awareness that perhaps at the end of 26, or very likely at the end of 26, what we do in terms of any fund balance that we have, we need in the back of our mind to know that transportation is going to be something that's impacted by that. So it's just going into that year knowing that's the case. I can't see, and we can't see a good course to recommend certainly going above the tax cap. I don't think that would be I don't think it would be wise for all sorts of reasons. But that reality, we can't. There's no desire on our part to make this seem like this is not going to be an increase more than we're suggesting here. So certainly hit questions with that. I might have to defer to Christine at times, but go ahead, Rich.
Can you tell me when we found out about the decision from Fisher?
Christine's been in conversations with our folks at Fisher Bus for months
And they
on
kept
this.
asking we're working through the numbers, so we'll let you know. So it was Thursday afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Tom was on vacation, I didn't wanna ruin his vacation, so I let him know on Monday when he came back. There is some good news, though. They did agree to renew at CPI for summer special ed and for sports that happen in August. So this affects because there's separate contracts for those things that happen over the summer. So at least not all of it is going out to bid. Those two contracts will renew at CPI for the summer, and then, so this will affect September 1st.
What was the CPI that they would have been entitled to? 3
Well, I budgeted 3.1, but CPI, what they're entitled to is what comes out at the end of May, which is crazy, right? Because you're making a budget and voters are voting on a budget prior to even knowing what CPI is. So you always have to estimate transportation anyways.
So this is a little higher than that. Did you budget
Because-
for new buses as well?
No,
Like new-
no, it was the routing software and the GPS is on that, so
Gotcha.
that's an additional expense. But all the transportation contracts were 3.1%.
Can you tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that I read in one of our NISBA papers that they're seeing this in other districts where their transportation companies are doing exactly that.
Yes.
They're same process.
My business official meeting at BOCES is tomorrow. However, at last month's meeting, 2 districts that were at the meeting were going out to bid.
Yeah, it was definitely an article
One
across
was
the state that they were
Cleve
seeing
Hill, and
this.
I forgot what the other one was. But
Yeah,
yeah.
because of the cost,
Yeah.
inflation, everything that's happening. Thank
How-
you.
Can you tell us a little bit, like, cause I'm green,
Okay.
how long do we usually take to hear back, like when we go out to bid, like what's the time frame on the process?
Well, we said it, but the contracts have to be to SCD, I think by July 1st. Or we have to have the RFP out and back by July 1st. I think I
So
read
it'll be
that
a while
today.
before we.
So, yeah, and well, we have to develop it, put in our criteria. The good thing, so there's actually 2 ways. You can go out to bid, just say, give us the bid for, or you can develop an RFP where you can have certain criteria weighted more than others. For example, the age of your buses. So there are some transportation providers who buy used buses from school districts and use that as their buses. So obviously they're old. So they would buy Frontiers buses or Fisher buses and put their logo on them and use them as their buses. So that's one piece that we can give either, the newer the bus, the more points you get on the RFP.
Thank you.
What is the, oh, I'm sorry, Mary, go ahead, you take a turn.
Okay. I feel really frustrated by this because you said they came out on Thursday. We met with them on Thursday, and it's frustrating that happened.
It's not our local person who wants this.
That's
it's
fair.
corporate.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
a
I should.
good
So you
That's
know,
a good
yeah.
point.
Yep.
That's fair. Thank you for clarifying. I'm curious. When we put out an RFP, do we have a sense of what are our priorities? What are our priorities? Like, what does that look like? Have y'all sat down and thought about like what that is?
No, we haven't had a meeting about it. What Christina's doing is she's gathering, she's taking our RFP from the last time this happened, which was 2017. She's got contacts with other districts and gonna take a look at what would make sense for us and also what's gonna make the best sense for our kids and our families too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that new bus versus old bus thing is, that's a relevant point.
Yeah, and there's actually criteria I printed off today off the New York State Transportation Unit website about what has to be in the RFP.
Oh, okay.
So,
And does BOCES help with the RFP? I know that they help with other things, so I don't know if BOCES also helps with this.
no, there is the gentleman, his name is Paul Overdorf. He retired from New York State Transportation Unit and he started his own company and he helps districts write RFPs. I don't know if we need him. When I got Cleve Hill's RFP, because I asked, well, look at it, see what makes sense for us and what doesn't. they said there were some things that they weren't thrilled about, some things that they had to change, and so I think, you know, using that as a base and then making it our own is probably the best way to go. I don't know if we
Yeah.
really wanna pay somebody that,
No, not if
I
you
don't
can.
think it's necessary.
Who are the other companies that are able to bid against Fisher right now?
So, well, any company that provides transportation, school bus transportation can, but the ones that I know of in the area are Western New York Bus Company and First Student.
And where are they located?
Western New York Bus is in Cheektowaga. First Student, I'm not sure where their, depot is. I wanna say the same area, but I'm not 100% positive.
And they do a few districts, I think they do East Aurora now.
They do, First
They
Student
the
does do East
city.
Aurora.
I think they do transportation for the city.
How is that possible for them to move every day back and forth from Cheektowaga, which is the closest location so far, right? And come and service Hamburg the way that Fisher does, and we're right in their
Exactly.
backyard.
As that would be one of the criteria in the RFP.
I hope so.
But what would they
That's
have to
allowed.
do
Right.
to make it feasible for them? It seems
They
logistically
would probably,
impossible.
I mean, I think that's one of the things why, I mean, the last time we did this in 17, I remember, even though we had, you know, obviously more than the CPI increase from Fisher, it was still substantially less than,
Yeah, it was.
I think First Student was the only one that even, do you remember that? I thought it was just for, but it was a sizable difference. Because to your point, you're pretty much gonna need, you know, a fleet of buses, however you're gonna do it. And a bus garage somewhere in the area. Like when I'm just making an assumption here, when First Student picked up East Aurora, they bought East Aurora's transportation system. Because their buses are still on 240 where they always were.
Right, but they
And it went
can't
from
buy
East
Fisher's
Aurora
buses.
to First Student.
Why
They're
not?
not gonna be buying Fisher's buses. So unless they have an
If
extra
Fisher
set of
loses-
buses somewhere.
If Fisher loses the RFP, they might have a lot of buses for sale.
I was gonna say, you know, if somebody can make the numbers work and say they'll buy out Fisher, I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
I have my doubts, I think
big if.
the price for entry is fairly steep. Which is, you know, which puts, you know, your provider, whatever your district is, you know, a little bit in the driver's seat. But they have to be realistic, otherwise.
Now, how many buses does Fisher use to service us? I mean, significant amount, right?
Yeah, I mean, just home to school is 37, but then we have our, out-of-district runs, and I'm not sure how many. Lindsay did present that at a transportation committee meeting that we had, I think it was in October, but I can't remember. You know, and then we had our McKinney-Bento runs and private school runs. I mean, it's a lot. Over 50, I wanna say, but 37 are just home to school, that I do know.
Well, it's disappointing. I think it's disappointing because.
The timing of it to me is like,
Right.
that's a little bit of a burr under the saddle for me. Like, I wish we would have known beforehand that was going to be the way it plays out. At the same time, I want to give a lot of grace to Fisher because they're not the ones who are making this call right now. And again, like, you know, Landmark came in and like, that's the parent organization. And, you know, I'm not living their world with it. It's a little bit, you know, it's similar to my frustration with the fact that we don't have a finalized budget in Albany. Getting that information earlier would have been beneficial to us.
Yeah, it comes across as a little bit of a power play in the timing of it.
Yeah.
You know, so now they're gonna we didn't have any knowledge of it leading up until, you know, just when we found out a short time ago. So we had no way to really even come to use any ability to try to figure it out in advance, if we thought that this was gonna happen, maybe we could have done something
Yeah.
different, I don't know, but.
You know, it's like, you know, you look back at the monthly presentations and Christine, and every single one, it was that the transportation was still, you know, we're sort of watchful waiting with this. And we're gonna go with 3-1, even though we think the CPI is gonna be a little bit lower than that. But that's the, you know, I'm not sure what the particulars were in 2017 with it, but when this type of decision is made, it hits districts and communities, you know, and the timing never seems like it's right. I was a building leader in another district where almost exactly the same type of thing happened. It was the local that was then bought by a larger, and pretty soon we were in RFP mode there. And it's that does seem to have it rhymes a little bit, like history does sometimes.
I have a follow-up question. We were just talking about the budget. We looked at the estimated increase, which brought to mind, didn't we just agree to purchase software for them for next year?
Yep.
So we've been investing in them. I mean, ultimately, like
I
that.
mean, we own the software, but
Yeah.
yes, Lindsay is trained on it from Fisher Bus.
Right,
So we will use it for summer.
Sure, sure.
But will we be, like, I know the idea is to get Fisher to come back in and still use them, but like, let's say they get outbid by somebody else, we still own the software, like, we still have the ability to
Yes.
use the software with whoever.
Correct.
So,
It's ours, we purchased it.
that's what I wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
it's
is
clear.
that
Yeah, we
just
just, that
made
was
this
our
deal
software.
No, it's a good point.
For software, I don't
Yeah.
wanna make sure, like, we're not investing all this money into software that then we can't have
Right.
if this doesn't go the way that we're thinking it goes.
Well, and if Fisher's not successful, and we have the software, it may not be compatible with the other organization that has to come in. So,
That's true. Although,
No, I think it's web-based and
It's-
they have an app, so I don't think
I thought it was
compatibility is an
one
issue.
that multiple bus companies were using. the
I was
same
gonna say Laura's
software.
right,
Yeah.
it's pretty ubiquitous. It's not inherently, but it's like, I don't know, it's like the Adobe yeah, I can't guarantee that the bus company that we would pick is gonna use it, but like, probably they're gonna be using some version.
Sounds like a good component to an RFP though.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, if all companies can use it, would we have had to buy it through them if they already use it? Maybe we do, maybe it's like you have to purchase a number of licenses for computers if we're relating it to Adobe. I'm just curious how that plays into it, cause I don't think it would.
I think there was a concern we had to own it because we own the data inside it, which is
Okay.
our own students'
Right.
Right.
addresses.
Thank you, yeah, that's.
and did we already make this purchase? It's done, right?
Yes.
For that, I think we're probably focused on, like, I think we had to buy the software because we had to own our students' data, right? So I think we weren't gonna get out of that, whether we worked with First Student or Fisher. I guess, I mean, I sort of look at this as not, I mean, it's disappointing, of course, like everybody said, but I'm optimistic. I hope First Student and some others come in with a really compelling offer and we really have a decision on our hands.
Yeah.
Rather than sitting here and saying, boy, no one's gonna come in with an offer that, I hope we reach out and really give these other vendors a shot.
Yeah,
Cause Fisher's taking a risk here.
yeah, I don't think this was really, we could really get an opportunity here to get something better or at par or, stimulate
the-
some growth.
The
stimulate some
RFP will be
competition.
designed to be like what's best for our students and our families.
Yeah.
It won't be designed for, it won't say your address needs to be,
Yeah.
it won't be written in such a way as to, like, that's not what the intent is. The intent is to do what's in the best interest of the kids and families and the district as a whole. So
Right.
and that'll be our guiding light on that.
And we can lock in, because we, like before, I'm assuming that we're basically out of contract, because we're just rolling it over. But I
Right,
remember
September, they
Like the
expire.
last, the last time we went out to, went out for RFP, I think we got locked in for like 4 years or 5 years, where, for us, that was a long time, because usually we were locked in for 2 or 3,
Locked in at CPI.
locked in at
All right,
CPI.
that's exactly what you were talking about earlier
Right,
today.
right.
So I'm assuming that contract, that time period obviously is over, because they have the out to, the risk they take is if someone wants to come in and undercut them or whatever, who knows?
And so if it comes in, at some number that you'd say is unreasonable, I don't know what that is. How do we make up that shortfall?
That is going to, well, and Christine and I, we've talked with our, sort of our executive lead team with it, but at the close of the 25-26 school year, your auditors will come in and we'll be able to say, whereas normally we'd be saying, and like in a traditional year, I don't know if there's ever a traditional year, but you'll be able to say, all right, this is gonna be how much we're gonna have for, we'll have already assigned the amount that we want towards the 26-27 budget. We'll know how much we have in the unallocated fund balance, that 4%. Would be the hope. And then we've got our reserves. And whereas we want to shore up our reserves, like we've talked about, we don't want to be in the fiscal stress category. But that's an area that we would look at. For that is like, so the reserves impacted in our fund balances where we look. We're confident that we'll be able to meet the demand with it. At the same time, we need to make darn sure that we're getting the best deal we possibly can for it. This is not news that's causing us to say, hey, listen, we got to talk about some serious things that have to do with the 25-26 budget. We're confident going forward with the 25-26 budget that we've got put out for approval, that we're putting up for approval tonight. Christine, weigh in on that where you need to, and correct me if you need to too.
Right, and I also feel that while the law is 4% fund balance at the end of the fiscal year, I've worked in districts where it's more than 4% and you have a rationale as why it's fiscally responsible to be at 6% because of X, Y, and Z, these unknowns. An example would be, we don't know about the federal title monies, right? So we're gonna put 6% in fund balance in case that title money goes away. And that's your rationale. You just have to write a corrective action plan in the fall after the audit of why, because the auditors say you exceed 4%, and we'll say why we did.
Is 6% a cap? Is that a
No,
max?
4% is the max by
4%.
law. There are some districts who have 10% fund balance, and they'll just take the slap on the hand.
Right.
And if the state comes in, if the controller's audit comes in, then they'll respond with the reasons why they do it.
Yep.
And there's, it's not the most popular thing to do because it can certainly bring some questions about the decision making with it. But in this case, when there's a clear cut reason like that rationale.
Like you saw that
can
a lot
understand it.
in 2010, 2011, when foundation aid was being cut, and districts then built, put more in fund balance because of the unknowns. Unrestricted fund balance, so you have some, leeway with there. Okay?
Yeah, so that's the little thing about transportation to talk about. But thanks for having the conversation. Like, that's important. I'm glad we're having it in front of folks and we're doing it like this.
Thank you.
So as you can see, same as last month, balanced budget, revenues equal expenses. There's our budget, the total dollar to dollar change. It's a 6% increase over last year. We are at the allowable tax levy limit, 44,569,417, which is 3.7%. So we don't need a super majority, and we don't recommend going over the tax levy limit. So instead of regurgitating all the same slides as last month, I added a few new slides, just some definitions. So the tax levy is the total amount of revenue needed to be raised in real property tax by the district. So the districts determined the total to be levied by that tax cap calculation that you saw in March. And so the tax rate is the dollar amount per thousand of assessed value needed to equal the levy. So the rate is calculated by dividing the total assessed value of each township, and we have 4 in our district, by the total amount of the levy to be raised, okay? So assessments are determine how the total tax is shared among the property owners within the district. Hamburg, Orchard Park, Eden, and Boston all have properties in the Hamburg Central School District. All parcels of real property are assessed by their own tax assessor. So Hamburg tax assessor does Hamburg properties, Orchard Park does Orchard Park properties, at a uniform percentage of fair market value. The law, however, does not specify how fair market value must be determined. So as a result, homes in one town within the district might be assessed at 40% of their value, while homes in a neighboring town might be assessed at 100% of their value. So what we have to do is equalize that, so everybody's paying their fair share. So an equalization rate is New York State's measure of a town's level of assessment. So the equalization rate is the total assessed value of the town divided by the total market value of the town. And then the full market value is the total assessed value of a town divided by the equalization rate. So once the full market value is determined, then school districts can determine how much revenue must be collected from each township. That's given to the assessors at the 4 towns, and then the tax rates are established then by those assessors in August, so they can print those tax bills and finalize the rolls and the equalization rates to the district. So there's time between the rates in August and by the time they print the bills and send them out, if somebody wants to challenge their assessment. So that's why there's that gap. So if you put up a garage, or you put a deck on your house, or an addition, you know you're gonna then have a new assessment on your house. And sometimes that can, like if you can prove your house, like, well, this house has a deck and the same square footage as my house, and their, assessment is higher, or, lower than mine, you have a basis for a challenge. So the next steps, we have the budget hearing on May 13th here at Armour at 6 o'clock. Our budget newsletter, the New York State deadline is to mail it out no later than May 14th, but I think we're mailing ours out in just a couple days. It will also appear on the district's website with all of the budget presentations that I've been giving since January. And then the budget vote is Tuesday, May 20th. It's always the third Tuesday in May, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the Hamburg High School gym. And just as a reminder, in the community, the Hamburg Farmers Market is Saturday, May 17th. That will be there, 7:30 to noon. And then the various PTSA budget presentations starting this Thursday up and through May 12th at the high school. So we'll be attending those. And that's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Anybody at the table have any questions? Any more questions, comments before we move on? All right. Moving on to our action items. Action item C1, can I have a motion that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Hamburg Central School District Board of Education adopts the Erie One BOCES administrative budget for 2025-26 in the amount of $4,127,759.
So moved.
So moved by Laura,
Second.
second by Rich. Questions, comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Item C2. Can I have a motion that the Board of Education cast one vote for each of the annual election for up to 3 board members of the, it's right here. 3 board members for the Board of Cooperative Education Services, First Supervisory District, Erie County. I'm proposing that we put our vote in for all 3 candidates, which is Cameron Hall, Mary Busey, and Mark Mecca.
So second.
So moved by Ashley, second by Rich. Questions, comments? Congratulations,
Yeah.
I think you're gonna get it. With this vote, you get it. Feeling good about it.
Yeah.
Feeling good about it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes.
Thanks for being willing to do that, too.
Thank you.
We
Thanks for the vote.
appreciate it.
Item C3, can I have a motion that the proposed 2025-26 budget in the amount of $88,949,955 be adopted and presented to the voters of the Hamburg Central School District as Proposition 1 on May 20th, 2025?
So moved.
So moved by Cam,
Second.
second by Laura. Questions, comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Item C4, can I have a motion to approve the publication of the 2025-26 property tax report card pursuant to, I'm saying that wrong, to the regulations of the Commissioner of Education?
So moved.
So by Cam,
Seconded.
second by Mary. Questions, comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item C5, can I have a motion to approve the personnel changes as presented?
So moved.
So moved by Ashley,
Second.
second by Laura. Questions, comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Flynn, if I could just give a thanks to Ann Onley for her career as a food service helper. And for the district, her retirement's been accepted as of July 1st. I want to thank her for her service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item C6, I have a motion to approve upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the contract with Landscape Structures Incorporated for the 2021 capital project Phase 3, contract BP 300 site work in the base bid of $555,374.56 for a total contract award of $555,374.56.
So moved.
So moved by Cam,
Seconded.
second by Mary. Questions, comments, discussion? And this is for the playground equipment.
Armor Elementary. Yep, exactly.
Will all this work be done before September?
I'm going to confidently say yes.
That's the goal.
Yeah,
That is absolutely planned.
That's the goal.
Absolutely.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. That's the end of our action items. I don't believe anyone has signed up for public expression. So seeing no other business, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
so moved.
So moved by Laura.
Second.
Second by Rich. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.